Hey, welcome back to the show where keeping it real goes right. Welcome back to Real Take Sports Talk live here on YouTube. Welcome to everyone watching at home. Welcome to everyone listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever the hell else you're listening to this show. We have a lot to get to today. Some wonderful news out of the NFL. We have some starting quarterbacks who finally, by God, finally have their jobs all ready and certain, ready to go. We also have news from ESPN, some very breaking news that we're going to go over regarding Rachel Nichols and her future, or lack thereof, at that company. Going to be talking about Lamar Jackson, who answered some questions from critics who said that the NFL has apparently figured him out. We'll discuss that. Much more from the wonderfully wacky world of sports. And we're going to do it all right here, right now, live here on YouTube and on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever the fuck else you're listening. I already said that. So let's kick it off today by discussing the breaking news that I mentioned. Let's start off today talking about Rachel Nichols. And this has been a bit of a developing story for the past few months. In case you haven't been paying attention, this goes back to about right before the NBA Finals, I believe, when the whole Maria Taylor-Rachel Nichols controversy came up. So let's get right to it and really get into it, rather. So Rachel Nichols' time at ESPN, or at least on the ESPN airwaves, has apparently come to an end. The network is now removing Rachel Nichols from her hosting duties on all NBA and ESPN programming, canceling The Jump, which is a very popular show on ESPN covering basketball. ESPN Senior Vice President of Production David Roberts confirmed this decision today, and it has shocked a lot of people, but also there's a lot of people who aren't too shocked about what has transpired, considering the more recent history of Rachel Nichols. So if we go back to just about a few months ago, just about, I believe, July, June, there was a big stir about some comments that Rachel Nichols had made about Maria Taylor, saying that she only got in her position, Maria Taylor only got in the position of covering the NBA Finals because of her race, and rightfully so. This caused an outcry amongst a lot of people. This caused an outcry amongst many people who were not only fans of the NBA, but just people in their right mind concerned about these comments, especially coming from someone who has been in a position that Rachel Nichols has been in. So I'll get to Rachel Nichols' specific reaction to this news, but let me read out something from John Outward, who talked to David Roberts on this decision today. David Roberts, the senior vice president of ESPN, says, quote, "We mutually agreed that this approach regarding our NBA coverage was the best for all concerned," said Roberts. "Rachel is an excellent reporter, host, and journalist, and we thank her for her many contributions and NBA content." So while she's not officially fired, it looks like it's the end of Rachel Nichols at ESPN. The report also goes on to note that she has 1 year left on her contract, so that means that she's basically just going to ride it out. And it's an interesting development. Now let's get Rachel Nichols' take on this very quickly. In a tweet earlier today, she said, "Got to create a whole show and spend 5 years hanging out with some of my favorite people, talking about one of my favorite things. An eternal gratitude, an eternal thank you to our amazing producers and crew. The Jump was never built to last forever, but it sure was fun. More to come." So that was Rachel Nichols thanking her producers, thanking her crew, thanking everyone she's worked with. I think the big question that, people who might not be familiar with the situation is, why is this happening? Because Rachel Nichols has been there for a long time. Yes, she made a terrible mistake, and she made, I don't know whether it was a lapse in judgment or she said the quiet part out loud. I think it's more so a little bit of combination of both. But she said something that was inexplicably terrible. And the reason that the reason it's hit so hard, the reason that it's so important that those comments that Rachel Nichols made about Maria Taylor be criticized to the extent they were is because these have been criticisms that have been levied at a lot of people of a lot of different backgrounds for a long time. That this person only got in this position not because they clawed and worked hard and overcame the barriers that were in place, but because of their race. It actually helped them. And that is a misnomer. That is a trope that has been proven to be wrong time and time again. It is completely untrue. So that's why it was important, I think, for people to come out against this and for ESPN to take some action. So look, you might be wondering, why now? Why is ESPN doing this now? Because Maria Taylor, who was a great host for ESPN, she already left. After the NBA Finals coverage on ESPN this year, she already left. She's now at NBC Sports doing, I'm assuming wonderful things. She's probably going to be doing some coverage of hockey perhaps and Sunday Night Football. So we'll see what she does. But for the question that I have honestly is why now? Because we know that what Rachel Nichols did was terrible. We know that what she said you can't really take back. The only thing you can do, and I legitimately think the only thing you can do is truly seek redemption and actually think about what you've done. Think about the ramifications of the comments, because these are damning comments when you think about it. And you have to learn from them. And you have to know that you learn from them first. And if ESPN wants to distance themselves from Rachel Nichols to this extent, that's fine. That's their prerogative. That's their decision. However, does it really fix the underlying problems that are at play at ESPN? Does it really fix the underlying problems that are at play here? I don't know. And look, it's hard to judge redemption. It's hard to judge whether or not a person has truly made strides to better themselves. That is something that Rachel Nichols is going to have to do at her own time. But when we're talking about this, we can't just talk about Rachel Nichols and how great of an anchor she was or is and how great of a reporter she is. That's a given. Rachel Nichols has a 20-year-long track record of being an amazing reporter, an amazing journalist, an amazing host. The Jump was one of my favorite shows on ESPN. It was honestly, it was one of the only shows where they just didn't go to outright debate all the time, and they actually talked about sports in a fun way. And I enjoyed that. So it has nothing to do with her credentials. It has nothing to do with her history as far as what she does professionally. It has to do with her credibility, because that's what took a hit when this went down. Her credibility took a hit. And I think that's honestly why ESPN has answered in this way. I think that they're just like, it is best for both parties, best for everybody involved, if we just move on and do a clean cut from this entire situation. And look, if we're being honest, it's not like Rachel Nichols is going to be jobless or not have a home for a while. Someone's going to pick her up. It's going to happen. It might take a little bit. It might take a little longer than it usually would. But I think someone's definitely going to pick her up. She's probably going to go to Fox Sports. She might go to CBS, who apparently they have a sports network. Who knew? I will tell you one thing. One place she's definitely not going. Rachel Nichols will damn sure not be going to NBC Sports. That's not happening. I'm sure that's not going to happen at all. But it's interesting. And again, these are they're tough conversations because what I've always disliked about this is the desire to either completely damn someone to an eternal banishment from everything, or on the other side, on the flip side of it, oh my God, what they said wasn't bad. No, what Rachel Nichols said was terrible. But what it did was it brought attention to something that we don't talk about. And these are conversations we should be having, because the thinking that Rachel Nichols outlined, the thinking that Rachel Nichols portrayed in her statements and in that recorded conversation about Maria Taylor were things that people have been saying behind closed doors for a long time. And they're tropes that need to be talked about in order for us to get past them. That's what it's about. So, and look, if and look, she didn't make the comments about me. I'm not going to be the one to forgive Rachel Nichols. I'm not. I don't even know if there's anyone out there who can or should forgive Rachel Nichols. It's not about forgiveness. It truly is a personal thing with Rachel Nichols. She has to genuinely learn from what she did and learn why those comments should not be spoken about like that, especially when you're talking about someone like Maria Taylor, who literally clawed and earned her way to her position at ESPN. This was like they were also just wrong, like as far as inaccurate. Like Maria Taylor's credentials speak for themselves. I'm not going to tout them here. Like so, it for me, it's just about that. It's not just, oh, Rachel Nichols should never ever have a job, or oh, we need to forgive her for everything. No, it's life is complicated and so are these issues, but if we don't talk about them, how are we expected to actually get past them? How are we expected to address them? And how are we expected to get better? And that is what this is all about. This is about not only Rachel Nichols, not only ESPN, but our society getting better at addressing these issues and talking about tough things like this in a more substantive and pragmatic and positive way. That's what it's about. So that's what I think we should take away from this. Again, ESPN. I don't know where ESPN goes from this, but who's really left though? That's the other thing, because Rachel Nichols goes away, and we'll just look at it from ESPN's perspective as far as who they have on air. Rachel Nichols goes away now, and it is now like who's left? You have Stephen A. Smith. Max Kellerman's doing stuff on ESPN radio, so he's going to be more distant away from TV. Stephen A. Smith. You have, the revolving door of analysts that they have. And then you have Greeny. But then other than that, everyone else from like the golden era, maybe Tony Reali and Michael Wilbon. But other than that, ESPN, man, it's looking pretty light, like especially on like personalities, And you don't want Stephen A. That's the thing. You don't want Stephen A. Like credible personalities. ESPN has had a problem with having credible personalities on the air because Stephen A., a lot of people love him. A lot of people don't like him. You cannot tell me that man is a credible personality as far as, sports. Look, I'm not saying he wasn't a journalist at the time, but now he's just a sports commentator. Kind of like me. And other than that, there's not really many left. And that's concerning for a place like ESPN that, at least it used to, pride itself on credibility, pride itself on its desire to report sports, report sporting news, and talk about sports in a fun way. It has turned very toxic. It has turned very, very it's not fun anymore. That's the thing. And I understand there are issues about sports that involve real life things. That's always been happening. Like serious topics have always been a part of sports. That's just life. And then sports is a microcosm of society and life. You have to, at some points, talk about tough issues that involve politics, that involve race, that involve stories we might not want to talk about. But that's life, and that's part of sports. But what I've been seeing for a very long time on ESPN, it's almost like the fun is completely taken out of it. And it's left with just being this bland, repetitive, reductive conversation, debates all the time. It's just debate after debate after debate after debate after debate. And I think everyone's just sick of it. Why can't we just have fun? Like and you know why? What happened to the investigative news stuff that they used to do? You know what I miss? Shows like the Sports Reporters. I might have been the only one who watched it, but personally, shows like the Sports Reporters with John Saunders and the crew every Sunday morning. That was an interesting show. The E60 stuff they used to do, they used to highlight way more often than they do now, was amazing. And it just seems like they've moved past that and just done an easy to make content that, any idiot can make. Anyway, that is what it is. Hopefully Hopefully, I just hope for everyone. I just hope everyone in this whole situation looks in the mirror and really addresses the issues that are at hand. I'm talking about ESPN, Rachel Nichols, everyone involved. So we'll see what happens with that. If it needs to be addressed later on, we will do so. If you guys haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this, be sure to hit that follow button and give us a 5-star review. Let's move on to another topic in sports. This one has more to do with the NFL. Let's move on to the NFL and let's talk about Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, former MVP, he's looking to help the Ravens improve on their 11-5 record from last year. Jackson was asked this week about whether or not he thinks that people in the league, people meaning defenses in the league, have figured him out. And Jackson's response to that was, we're going to see. But I doubt it, though. I strongly doubt it. And this caused a little bit of a firestorm, not only on Twitter, but on various different shows, various different outlets. And the question has become, have defenses found a way to figure out Lamar Jackson? And I'm just going to address this very blatantly and very openly. No, they haven't. Because last time I checked, Lamar Jackson is 2 years removed from leading the NFL in touchdowns. Last time I checked, Lamar Jackson, back-to-back the past 2 years, the past 2 seasons, has had 1,000 yards rushing. Last time I checked, Lamar Jackson last year, he had 26 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Last time I checked, Lamar Jackson still completing above 64% of his passes. Last time I checked, Lamar Jackson has 7 yards per attempt. Last time I checked, Lamar Jackson is still a top 5 quarterback in this league. Last time I checked, the Ravens are 11-5 last year, 14-2 the year before, and I believe they were 6-3 with Lamar Jackson. Actually, no, 6-1 with Lamar Jackson at the helm the year previous. So have defenses found a way to figure out Lamar Jackson? If they have, I am not seeing any evidence of that. Point blank, not seeing any evidence of that. There are a lot of people who want to say that, Lamar Jackson, he's great. He's a great runner, and his ability to run makes him a better thrower. You know what? You're right. And you're telling me that you're not supposed to use your abilities to help you be a better football player? Is that what some of the people are saying? Because if that's what you're saying, then why do we have quarterbacks moving outside? Why does Baker Mayfield do a lot of his plays rolling out to the left? Because he's better when he rolls out. Why does Russell Wilson like to move around the pocket? Because he's better when he moves around the pocket. Why? I never got that. Lamar Jackson is an amazing runner whose ability to throw is only scrutinized because he is such an amazing running quarterback. His athletic, is he a better runner than he is a passer? Probably. I will say that. You know what? And you know what? That's not a fair comparison to make, because he might be he is the best running quarterback of all time. No disrespect to Michael Vick. It's just true. He's the best running quarterback of all time. And on top of that, for his first 3 years, for as young as he is, I believe, for a quarterback who's 24 years old in age, Lamar Jackson is the most efficient quarterback for his age in NFL history. I'm talking about completion percentage, touchdown and interception ratio, yards per attempt. He is the most efficient at all of those categories for his age in NFL history. Yet we still talk about his ability to throw as a question. He led the league in touchdown passes. He won the MVP. He led the league in touchdown interception ratio 2 years ago. Last year, he had a down year, and it was still a damn good year throwing the football. And that's the thing that I think people underlook Lamar Jackson because of his ability to run. And that, I don't know, that might just be a thing where people, they are just conditioned to think of quarterbacks and think of the quarterback position in a certain way. And they don't want to deviate from that. They don't want to look beyond that. And they don't want to look beyond the certain way that we've been brought up to really look at quarterbacks. Because we've been brought up to look at quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, statues in the pocket who are efficient from the pocket. Lamar Jackson, by the way, very efficient from the pocket. One of the more efficient quarterbacks in the NFL from the pocket. That's just true, too. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about how, oh, my God, Lamar Jackson, he can't throw the ball downfield except when he does to receivers who really aren't that good or you can't name. Outside of Hollywood Brown, name one receiver on the Ravens. Maybe Mark Andrews you can name because he's also, okay, yeah, he has one of the best tight ends in the league. Outside of that, he doesn't really have anyone. And they use him perfectly. If you had a talent like Lamar Jackson and you didn't run the ball with him, you would be an idiot. You would be fired as a head coach, fired as an offensive coordinator because you're not using your best talent in the best way to use him. Lamar Jackson should be running. Lamar Jackson should be passing. Then the Ravens do a great job of finding a way to do both. And they get the most out of him. That is the job of a coach. That is a job of an offensive coordinator. That is a job of a football team. To make plays, to use players to the best of their ability. And for people to somehow warp this as, oh my God, because he's such a great runner, he must be a terrible passer. Completely asinine, ignorant, terrible argument. So miss me with that bullshit. Seriously, miss me with that bullshit. Because what else does he need to do? What else does Lamar Jackson need to do? Do people want to see Lamar Jackson throw for 4,000 yards and throw for 50 touchdowns? Is that what they want? Because if that's what you want, no, he'll probably never do that. Lamar Jackson might never throw for 4,000 yards, and that's okay. You know why? Because he's going to run for 1,000 every year too. And that's fine. You know why? Because the Ravens are an offense that is predicated on holding the ball for long periods of time, running it down your throat, and they don't need to have as many plays as other teams. They don't need to have as many ability or times to throw the ball as other teams. They don't throw the ball that often because they don't need to, because they're usually up and they're usually controlling the tempo of the game. That's their entire strategy. So if you just want to look at isolated stats and just look at, oh my God, oh, he only threw for 3,000 yards this year. Miss me with that. Watch the goddamn game. You want to analyze football, people? Watch the game. Watch this guy play. Go back and watch the Monday Night Football game against the Browns and tell me he can't throw. Go back and watch any game from 2019, his MVP season. Tell me that guy can't throw. Go watch the game where he's playing Jalen Ramsey and he cuts him up. Tell me he can't throw. Fuck experts, analysts, fucking analysts don't know shit. I'm sorry. That's my quarterback. I get defensive. I get defensive when people bullshit me about my own quarterback because then you know what the thing is? I was talking to a friend one time, and he was like, and he was trying to make the argument. This was right after Lamar Jackson's MVP season. He was trying to make the argument with me that, oh man, Lamar Jackson, he's just not as good as even Kyler Murray, or he's not as good as the other running quarterback, Josh Allen. I was like, what do you mean he's not? He's like, yeah, well, look at his touchdown-interception ratio. And I was like, okay, look at his touchdown-interception ratio from this year. And he's like, oh, damn, okay. But his yards per attempt is low. And I was like, really? And then I looked at the stats, and I was like, oh, yeah, he actually has a higher yards per attempt than Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. Silence, because sometimes people don't know what where they're talking out of, but I know. And at that point, my friend, God bless him, was just talking out of his ass. But that's what people do sometimes. Let's go to the chat real quick. No Lara, I believe. I'm butchering that name. Says in the chat, it all depends on how Rachel Nichols handles either. Okay, I need to look at myself in the mirror, or, yeah. She needs to look at herself in the mirror. That's what it is. Big Ticket in the chat says, a lot of NFL analysis like Steve Smith are critical of the lack of routes the wide receivers run. That's true, too. The Ravens offense is kind of, it's like slant and go. It's slant and go. Sometimes it's slant and go, but it also, I don't think it needs to be overly complicated either. I think they can throw in some deep balls. Because I do one thing I will criticize Lamar Jackson for, and this was more so last year. In 2019, he did a great job of this. 2020, I don't know why. Maybe I don't know what it was. I truly don't know what it was. Sometimes I felt like there was a lack of desire to just let go of the ball and throw it downfield. And it's not because he couldn't. Lamar Jackson can, and he did a few times when he needed to. But there were some times where I saw wide receivers streaking down the field, and I was like, just unload it, cannon. And, and look, he worked out with the receivers this offseason. Maybe it was also like because last year was like the COVID season. There were problems as far as getting people together for training camp and getting routes together or getting some chemistry. So maybe that was it. So we'll see what happens this year. Big Ticket in the chat also says, Lamar is the truth. You speak the truth. God damn right I do. And the truth is, you're selling yourself short if you're not subscribed to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and hitting that like button so as many people as possible can see this video. So let's move on, everyone, and talk about college football, something we don't talk about too often. Whoops. Ooh, we messed up there. Let's talk about college football, though. There is a merger in the works, and I talked about it on a video earlier today. There's a merger in the works. There's a merger that has apparently been completed. The commissioners of the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC made it official this week, announcing an alliance between the three leagues, but they offered little as far as concrete plans for the future. Instead, the group announced that the alliance was a handshake agreement with a unanimous support from all members, born from a mutual appreciation for academics, quote unquote, sponsoring sporting events, and general pursuit of social justice, gender equality, diversity, and inclusion. Tuesday's announcement did not offer a clear path forward as far as scheduling and whether we're going to get interconference play between these three conferences, but there was a quote from one AD that says, there is an air of cooperation. We don't know what opportunities might come from it. So you might look at this and say, well, that's a whole lot of nothing. And on some level, you are correct. It does sound like a whole lot of nothing. But let me just get down to the reason why that these conferences kind of came together in the manner that they did and made this announcement at least. It is because they are seeing so much control, so much power, so much influence, and so much spotlight put on one conference. And that is the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. And what triggered this really was the defection of both Texas and Oklahoma from the Pac-10 or from the Pac-12 to the SEC. They're going to be going over there. Those are two huge schools, two historic schools that are now leaving their own conferences in pursuit of more money, more credibility, higher competition in the SEC. And we already know about the SEC bias because the SEC is put on a pedestal more so than any other team. They have an advantage in recruiting, or any other conference. They have an advantage with recruiting. They have an advantage with getting bigger deals because there is such a spotlight and so much clout in the SEC. And there's so much. There's over the years they've built that up to where they're an unstoppable machine. Really, every year there's at least two teams from the SEC that are in the college football playoff, and there's only 4 spots. So that's why this alliance was announced. That's why that these three conferences are going forward in the way they are. You might be asking yourself, what could a partnership look like? And honestly, I'm not sure about the details, but one thing I think you can definitely expect, maybe not next year, but 2-3 years down the line, you could definitely expect interconference play. You can 100% expect that because these three conferences are going to have to put their heads together, put their resources together to somehow compete with the juggernaut that is the SEC. And the best way to do that is put your best teams against each other throughout the year, maybe 2 to 3 games a year on the schedule or interconference play. And you do that in order to make the competition stiffer and put more spotlight on your teams. Excuse me. And the other thing you have to also take into play with the interconference play is making sure you schedule these things in the best way for logistics to work out, because Pac-12 and Big Ten, sometimes that involves 6-hour flights over the weekend and then 6 hours back. Because you're traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, maybe. So there's logistics that need to be figured out, but those will be figured out. Those 100% will be figured out, and that's the biggest crucial aspect of this that needs to be addressed early on, rather, because if you're the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and the ACC, before Texas and Oklahoma leave, you want to have already had some interconference game played, so that by the time that they're already gone by 2025, you have this level of credibility at least built up between these 3 conferences, that some of your teams are elevated to the level of an SEC, or at least, on somewhat of an equal playing field. And that's what this is all about. Making sure that they are able to maintain a level of respectability and credibility comparatively to the SEC. As far as what this might mean for college football, I think this is necessary. This is necessary. And look, it might set a trend, because there's a lot of conferences in college football that never get a chance at stuff like this. Like, if I'm like the Mountain West Conference, if I'm all these other conferences, dude, combine, like, let's go. If you want to compete with even these conferences right now, you have to be thinking about this right now, because those conferences are always overlooked. So maybe this starts a trend of conferences pooling their resources together. Maybe we see mergers happening out of this, because this is not an all-out merger. This is more of an alliance, is the quote from the report that I read. But it's necessary. It's necessary because if they just allow this to happen and allow the SEC to just consolidate more and more talent, more and more resources, more and more clout, more and more credibility, over time, these conferences were just going to fade out, and Pac-12 wasn't going to become anything better than, like the Mountain West, and then that's I know that sounds weird to say, but that's just true. So this is necessary. This had to happen, and it had to happen in a way that made sure that made sure that the resources were pooled quickly. So it's a huge announcement, by the way. It is huge for college football, and it honestly might have saved some of these teams, some of these conferences from, who knows? Like look, the Pac-12 lost two huge schools. That is huge for them to lose those teams. And over time, they weren't getting that better. They were not getting that better. Over time, Big Ten was also losing some schools. Who knows what would happen to Notre Dame after more stuff is consolidated in the SEC? Would they have to become a part of it? And, we might even see we might see Notre Dame go over to the ACC full time. We know they tried that on a trial basis last year. So there's a lot to come out of this, I think. Over the next year or two, we're going to see this develop into a much larger picture, into a much larger scenario. So excited to see and hear about that, because it honestly needed to happen. You couldn't allow the SEC, because it was just going to become the SEC champion, wins the national title, which I don't think anyone wants to see, unless you live outside of the southeast region of America. If you do that, if you live there, then you're perfectly fine with that, But it'll never be Georgia. Even if that's the case, it'll never be Georgia, because Georgia, they can't win. They can't win. They always choke. Let's move on, everybody, and talk about, what are we talking about next? Ooh, quarterbacks, the NFL. We love that. Let me drink my water real quick. In the meantime, hit that like button, guys. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Ooh, the lighting is better. All right, so let's move on and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's move on and talk about the number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence. It seems like a formality, but Urban Meyer has officially announced that Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, will be the starting quarterback to start the season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Meyer made a bit of a story last week when he said that there was an open competition between Lawrence and incumbent mustachioed starter Gardner Minshew. That is not the case anymore. Lawrence this preseason has gone 20 of 32 for 184 yards and no touchdowns, but also has not thrown an interception. And this speaks to something that we already kind of knew, and that is that this was Trevor Lawrence's job to lose, and he really didn't do anything to lose it. That was always it. It was, if Trevor Lawrence struggled mightily in the preseason and in training camp, maybe they would have started with Minshew to start off the season, give him a few weeks to kind of get more acclimated to the offense, more acclimated to the NFL system. Doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like he's good enough in training camp to start right away, or at least not bad enough to not start right away. And look, I think it was a formality. The only reason Urban Meyer announced that there was a quote open competition is because he wanted to bring the best out in both of these quarterbacks, because Gardner Minshew is also a good quarterback that we'll talk about more in depth later. But I think now the bigger question becomes, now that we know he's a starter, is what can we expect from Trevor Lawrence? And there's a lot riding on him. The Jacksonville Jaguars went 1-15 last year. This is not a good football team. And they believe that Trevor Lawrence is the answer to a lot of their problems, at least over the next few years. And the truth is, he might be. Trevor Lawrence, coming out of college, was the number 1 prospect in the draft. He was a number 1 quarterback prospect. He probably was a number 1 player prospect. I had higher. I think Penei Sewell and maybe Devontae Smith were better positional players at their positions than Trevor Lawrence. But I still think Trevor Lawrence was going to go number 1 no matter which team selected him. And he probably should have, because this guy has a ceiling of a NFL Hall of Famer. That is just truth. And it's not just about, oh, look how big he is, look how strong his arm is. It is about, if you watch the games, this guy makes reads very well. He throws the ball with good enough velocity. He's accurate. He's a leader. He's got everything you want. And he's shown that he has that intangible trait that leads to development over time. And he's a guy, I think, who's going to develop into I think, a Pro Bowl level quarterback. And who knows what the future might hold for him. But what can we expect immediately from Trevor Lawrence? I think you can expect struggles immediately. And that is not an indictment on Trevor Lawrence. That is not an indictment on, oh, hey, you shouldn't have gone number 1. He's going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was a 1-15 football team last year with Gardner Minshew at the helm. And Minshew was a damn good quarterback too. But he couldn't overcome it. And I think it's going to be hard, because that offensive line is not good. Trevor Lawrence is going to get hurt. And we've seen over the preseason, he was rushed a lot when he dropped back to throw. And you're going to expect to see a lot of that throughout the postseason, or throughout the regular season, rather. And the other question is, like, what can we expect from the Jags overall? I mean, even with Lawrence at the helm, I think Lawrence is going to maybe light a spark in the same way that Joe Burrow did for the Bengals last year. And it wasn't apparent if you looked at the stats or the scoreboards or the record. Like, the Bengals were last year, they were a pretty bad football team. And that's a reason they were picking top 5 again in the draft. But the reason why we saw what we saw from the Bengals last year was, and we weren't concerned necessarily about Joe Burrow, was we saw that he was poised. We saw that he could hang. And I think that's what you're going to see from Trevor Lawrence this year. A lot of poise and the ability to kind of hang in there and be like, all right, he's not ready now, but this guy's going to be special one day. And I think that's what we can expect from Trevor Lawrence. I think that's what we can expect from the Jacksonville Jaguars football team. Like, this is not a team that's going to go, 10-6 or 10-7 because there's 17 games now, or 9-8 or whatever it's going to be. They're probably going to struggle a little bit, but I think they're going to be in some games because this was even a competitive team last year, early on in the year when Minshew was at the helm. So for Trevor Lawrence, I think the expectations or the goal is to just play ball this season, learn, acclimate, and adapt to the NFL game. That is your goal. Your goal isn't to go out there and make the playoffs. If it happens while you're doing all of that, amazing. Don't see it really happening, but if it does happen, that is an amazing feat, and he should be proud of that. But the goal is to stay upright, stay healthy, and learn the NFL game, adapt. And that's the biggest thing for a young quarterback, learning how to adapt from the college game to the NFL game. Trevor Lawrence, he played Alabama. He played a lot of tough schools. He played against a lot of people that are in the league right now, so he knows it. And he played at some of the highest stages in college football. He's going to have to play better than he ever did then in order to stay upright in the NFL. And it's not going to be apparent immediately. I promise you. There's going to be a lot of people who they're going to see Trevor Lawrence first few weeks and be like, oh my God, he struggled. He's only completing blah, blah percent of his passes and yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And they're going to write him off as a bust immediately because some people just don't like Clemson. But in actuality, what you look for a young quarterback on a bad team is poise, ability to shake off mistakes, and the ability to hang in there. And you will see that from Trevor Lawrence. As far as the other quarterback on the Jacksonville Jaguars team, his name, of course, is Gardner Flint Minshew II. So I've talked ad nauseum about Gardner Minshew, how great he is, how wonderful of not just a quarterback, but a human being he is. But let's talk about Gardner Minshew a little more. So Gardner Minshew has been the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars over the past few seasons. Trevor Lawrence is now the guy. Minshew is now officially the backup. It was all a formality. It was going to happen eventually. But when you look at Gardner Minshew and you look at him now being the backup, what is next is the question. And if you look at his history, this is a guy who has thrown for 37 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, over 5,000 yards, 7-13 as a starter over the past 2 years on a shitty, itty-bitty, shitty Jacksonville Jaguars team, who, of course, has the swagger over 9,000 on some Vegeta shit. Gardner Minshew, in my opinion, is going to be a guy who I think some teams are going to look at maybe as somewhat of a maybe a mid-season replacement quarterback. Maybe he gets traded. Maybe he was maybe the reason that Urban Meyer was talking about a quarterback competition was because he wanted to maybe bring up Gardner Minshew's trade value. And look, Gardner Minshew to me is a guy who he can play. He can not only play ball in this league. I think Gardner Minshew can be a pretty good quarterback. If you look at his draft class, look at Gardner Minshew's draft class. Look at some of the quarterbacks that went before him. Gardner Minshew went in the 6th round. And two of the quarterbacks that went before him and who were first-round picks were Dwayne Haskins, who is trying to be a backup in Pittsburgh right now, and Daniel Jones, who we'll talk about later on in the show, who didn't have his 5th-year option picked up. And it's not even close. Gardner Minshew is much better than both of those quarterbacks. Confirmed. Take it to the bank. That is truth, gospel, definitely. But so he's like arguably the best quarterback from his draft class. I can't think of the other guy who was picked before him, but Gardner Minshew he's better than a lot of the quarterbacks that went before him. He has been able to show that he doesn't make mistakes. That's the thing. And I know that's a bit of the quarterback position, you can't just not make mistakes. You have to also, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was probably a better player than Gardner Minshew, if I'm being honest. But rookie season, Gardner Minshew had a better year. That's just truth. Look at the stats. But no. Gardner Minshew he does a lot of things that you want these young quarterbacks who are developing to do. Not turn the ball over, make the most out of a play, and make plays running outside the pocket when it all breaks down. That's what he has done for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been able to steady the ship at many times when it wasn't really steadyable. That's not even a word, but you know what I mean. He's got the leadership intangibles. Like, the players loved him. Talk to the players in Jacksonville Jaguars over the past few years. They loved playing for Gardner Minshew. The fans loved Gardner Minshew. You know, the mustache became a meme, but it was truth. And it showed you this charisma, this swagger that you kind of need when you're a leading quarterback and you're trying to be the guy. You know, and the Jacksonville Jaguars were in a situation where they had to pick Trevor Lawrence. If I was a GM and I love Gardner Minshew, I would have picked Trevor Lawrence. Like that, you just have to. So, moving forward, I think there still are some teams that I think have quarterback questions that could have their problems alleviated with Minshew at the helm. You know, if you are, let's say, for example, a team like the Colts, who we saw Carson Wentz return to practice, very light practice. We don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. Is that a place he could go to? You know, if things don't work out in New York, how fitting would it be that Gardner Minshew maybe gets traded to New York and he goes to the Giants and he outplays, which he likely will, Daniel Jones, you know? So there's many places I think he could go and give value. Carolina Panthers, don't scratch them out either. Carolina Panthers could be a landing spot for him if Sam Darnold doesn't work out. The Broncos, are you fine with Teddy Bridgewater being your starting quarterback? Because I think Gardner Minshew can do a lot of stuff Teddy Bridgewater can do and is honestly better at it and more efficient at it and more accurate at it. So maybe that's a place. So I think the NFL would be doing itself a disservice. Teams would be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't at least make a call to inquire about Minshew, because he's a locker room guy, he's a football guy, and he's just good. He's just damn good. I don't get it. I never got it. I never got why teams didn't go after Minshew even more than they did. Like, he's good. He's just that damn good. You know what else is that damn good? This channel. If I can't say so myself. And if you agree with me, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. We have daily videos on not just sports, not just wrestling, but everything you can think about. I don't know. I messed that line up. I do that. It's whatever. But I got a bunch of great videos coming out. If you want early access to some awesome documentary videos I'm working on, you can hit up patreon.com/Real Take Sports. Join the $5 a month or above club. You also get access to exclusive live shows after Real Take Russell Talk. So you'll get that and much more that is in the works, that is happening. You also get to help out with us, help us create this content, help me create this content, and just contribute to the show, and you'll get a thank you from me every week. So let's move on though and talk about not the NFL, not the NCAA, but let's talk about the NBA. We're going back to the NBA, and I don't know what's going on. Seems to be a lot of negative news concerning the NBA as of late. But them's the breaks, and we got to report them. So this was interesting. Nerlens Noel is suing Clutch Sports and the agent, the very famous super agent, Rich Paul. So let's talk about it. Let's move forward to the NBA, where the New York Knicks center, Nerlens Noel, is going after one of the most powerful agents in the NBA in Rich Paul. This week, Noel filed a lawsuit against agent Rich Paul and Clutch Sports, claiming that he lost $58 million in salary while as a client of Paul's from 2017 through 2020. Noel claims that Paul was in breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty, and neglectful of Noel, his client at the time. Noel took action after Clutch Sports recently filed a grievance with the National Basketball Players Association, claiming that Noel hadn't paid a $200,000 bill in commission on the previous one-year contract with the Knicks. So there's a bit of a history between the two parties at play here. For those of you who don't know, Rich Paul is an NBA super agent. Some of his most notable clients are people like John Wall, Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons, and of course, most notably, LeBron James. That was like his first big client. So there's a lot to talk about here, and this is when sports. This is the unfun side of sports, the very sad side of sports that people don't want to talk about, where money gets held up and whatnot. So there's a lot to talk about here. First of all, I just want to address this. Initially, what do I make of all of this? Initially, it seems like Noel is claiming that while he was an agent, while he was a client of Rich Paul, when he had a great season. He had a season with the Mavs where he averaged 10 points, 7 assists, or 7 rebounds, and a block a game. Like not elite, but very good and worth a big contract. Now, Noel, who was represented by another agent before, claims that he had received an extension offer from the Mavericks in 2013, on a or not in 2013, but he had received, after that season with the Mavericks, he had received an offer, 4 years, $70 million. And Paul allegedly pitched Noel as a client by saying he was a, quote, $100 million man and could receive a max offer if he became Paul's client. So Noel then hired Paul and subsequently rejected the Mavericks offer, instead signing the $4.1 million qualifying offer to become a free agent the following summer. So Rich Paul essentially kind of persuaded Nerlens Noel to bet on himself to become a $100 million max contract player the next year. And that decision would prove to be very costly for Noel, as he struggled in the following year, only playing 30 games, being injured, and hit career lows in every major statistical category. So that's the point where Nerlens Noel claims that Paul had become, negligent in his duty, and he began to apparently lose interest in him as a client. And when he hit unrestricted free agency in 2018, he claims neither Paul nor anyone at his agency at Clutch Sports presented any offers or strategies to alleviate the situation. So instead of signing a max contract, Nerlens Noel ended up signing the league minimum deal with Oklahoma City for 2 years, ended up making like $3 billion off of that. And then they broke off. And look, from Nerlens Noel's side, I can understand this. I can understand frustration from having missed out on a life-changing opportunity. Because I don't care what anyone tells you, $50 million to play basketball. And I know it's for $58 million to play basketball. I know it's not, big comparatively to a lot of the contracts we're seeing. That is a shit ton of money. That is a shit ton of life-changing money. That is generational wealth. So I don't want to hear oh my God, he should have wanted more anyway. Well, okay, you should have wanted more, but still, $58 million is a life-changing amount of money. And that's why Nerlens Noel is probably pissed, because he's like, man, I could have had that money. And now I'm playing for what, $3 million a year? So I understand his frustration on that level, but I'm not going to say that I agree with the idea that Rich Paul, persuading Nerlens Noel that he should wait until the next year to get that max contract. I don't think that's on Rich Paul. That's on Nerlens Noel for getting persuaded. That's on Nerlens Noel for betting on himself. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes betting on yourself works out. Look at Joe Flacco in 2012. He bet on himself. He didn't sign a minimal contract extension with the Ravens going into that season. What does he do? He goes out and has his best year, wins the Super Bowl, gets Super Bowl MVP, becomes the highest paid player in the NFL. Sometimes it works out. Other times, like in this case with Nerlens Noel, it doesn't. That's why in sports, you got to take your money while you can. You got to go to the bank while you can. Sports is a cutthroat business. And when you have money on the table like that, and you're in the position where Nerlens Noel was in, you probably should have taken the money. So that's why I guess Nerlens Noel is possibly angry. Now, as far as the claims of Nerlens Noel, and the negligence that happened after that year, at the point where Nerlens said that Paul began to lose interest, and he never really reached out, or he never got any good offers for him. Nerlens might have a point there, because if there's truth to that, if there's evidence that Rich Paul began to lose interest in Nerlens Noel as a client and didn't represent him to the best of his ability, he might have a case. However, I struggle to really think of ways to prove that. I think that's going to be very difficult, especially in a court of law. I know even private law or civil law rather, there's a little more bend to the rules. There's less burden, but even that, I struggle to see how you can prove that there was a lack of interest, unless you can prove that Nerlens Noel reached out at many points and never got a response back. Maybe, but I'm not sure what the evidence is. I'm sure that'll come out over time. So if that's the case, then Nerlens Noel does have a point. But at the end of the day, I do think for a large portion of this, it's on Nerlens Noel for betting on himself. That's the breaks. Them's the breaks, kid, as someone once said. You have to be able to look at the situation, and when you're an athlete, when you're just coming off your best year, sometimes you just got to take what you got and go with it and wait for the next contract to come around. Especially when you're in a position where Nerlens Noel was, where he was a highly touted prospect out of college, and he fell in the draft a little bit. He struggled his first few years, and then when he got to Dallas, he did well. And he had his best year, and people were like, oh, he's finally catching up. At that point, maybe, who knows, maybe you've maxed out, maybe you haven't. Take the money. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of people can learn from this. And again, if Rich Paul was truly negligent in the way that he represented Nerlens Noel, then yeah, Rich Paul needs to be held to account too. I just struggle to see how you prove that. That's been my thing. I just don't know how you prove that in a court of law to other people. But we'll see if Nerlens Noel can do that. I wish the best for him. I truly do. I wish the best for everybody. I wish the best for you, especially if you're watching this, if you're listening to this. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, hit that follow button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and give us a 5-star review if you would please. We got a lot to get to today. We've had a lot of topics today. And the next topic involves quarterbacks, and two quarterbacks that you haven't really heard a lot of, or a lot from rather, this offseason, but unless you're out of Denver. If you're in Denver, you definitely heard about both of these quarterbacks, and you feel very strongly one way or another. So let's get right to it. The Denver Broncos have made a decision about their quarterback, and they are going with Teddy Bridgewater. Yes, Teddy Bridgewater, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings and the New Orleans Saints, and following that, the Carolina Panthers. He was embroiled in a quarterback competition with Drew Lock, who was the Broncos starting quarterback for the better part of the last 2 years. Drew Lock was the 42nd overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. He has lost his starting quarterback job to Bridgewater. Bridgewater, of course, was a first-round pick back in 2014. So it kind of come full circle. We saw Teddy Bridgewater last year. He was the starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. He won that job, remember, by starting a few games in relief of Drew Brees in 2018. And he did very well in the Saints offense. He did very, very well as a member of the Saints. He had, I think you can say, honestly, his best season, because he had a great winning percentage, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, completed 67% of his passes as a member of the Saints. In Carolina, the team was struggled. It was a very average to below average team, if we're being honest. 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, still completed damn near 70% of his passes, but nothing spectacular. Nothing spectacular. Good enough to prove that he can still play, but not good enough to prove that he can be a franchise guy. And I think that's the question. What can Teddy Bridgewater be as the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos? And what do the Denver Broncos look like with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm? And if I'm being honest, I don't see it being that much better with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm than Drew Lock. The one thing I will say, Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who will not make mistakes, at least that often. He is not. Last year, I think, was an anomaly because he was on a team that was very in a bad place, as far as where they were in the rebuild. But I think the Broncos are a team. They have some talent on offense. They have Noah Fant. They have Cortland Sutton. They have Jerry Jeudy. They have solid running backs in Melvin Gordon and the like. So this is an offense that has some good offensive talent around it. I think Teddy Bridgewater is in a good situation to succeed and I think hold water and maybe steady the ship for the Denver Broncos in a way that maybe Drew Lock wasn't prepared for. But I don't know. I don't know because I think Drew Lock, if you look at what he did in his rookie year, he showed a lot of poise too. That's why I'm saying I'm not sure what the difference really is. Maybe this marks the end of Drew Lock. We'll talk about that in a second. But as far as what Teddy Bridgewater can do as a starting quarterback, can he win? Can he get a winning record with this team? I think so, sure. Can they beat the Chiefs? That's the big question. Can they beat the Chiefs? And no, they can't. They don't have the offensive firepower to beat the Chiefs with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm. I'm sorry. They have a better chance if they trade for someone, I don't know, like Gardner Minshew. Genuinely, I think Gardner Minshew puts them in a much better spot. But does Teddy Bridgewater do that? No, because Teddy Bridgewater, sorry to say, his arm, not the best. I think Drew Lock is actually better in a better position to do that than Teddy Bridgewater is. But Teddy Bridgewater apparently was doing very well in training camp. And again, if the goal for the Denver Broncos this year is to just be solid and okay, go 9-8, go 10-7, sure, I think Teddy Bridgewater can do that. We can go 500. We can go right around there maybe. But he's not the long-term answer. That's just in my eyes. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is a long-term answer for this team. Could he prove me wrong? Absolutely. I hope he does. I love Teddy Bridgewater. But looking at what I've seen, looking at what I know about Teddy Bridgewater and this team, I just don't think it's a good fit. So we'll see what happens with that. As far as Drew Lock goes. So Drew Lock, this is an interesting situation. Teddy Bridgewater is now the starting quarterback in Denver. Drew Lock, 42nd overall pick back in 2019. He is now relegated to the bench. What does this mean for him? And could it mean the end? The answer to that is probably. The fact that they were willing to give Teddy Bridgewater the starting job probably means that in the offseason, whether or not Teddy Bridgewater does well, they're going to be looking for another quarterback in this offseason, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency, a trade, regardless. They're probably moving on from Drew Lock. And that is barring, Teddy Bridgewater either getting benched or injured and Drew Lock coming in and just lighting it up. Drew Lock would have to come in relief of Teddy Bridgewater, light it up, beat the Chiefs for him to save his job. That's what you got to do. You have to prove that you are not only able to compete with the Chiefs, but you're also able to compete with Justin Herbert, Air Bear over there in L.A. You got to compete with Derek Carr. Is Drew Lock even better than Derek Carr? Probably not. Is he better than Air Bear? Definitely not. Is he better than Mahomes? Ha ha. Funny. So that's the thing. He's probably the fourth best quarterback in that division amongst if you don't even count Teddy Bridgewater. And the fact that Bridgewater was able to beat him out should be alarming to Drew Lock fans. It should be alarming to Drew Lock because that means someone came in and beat you. Because the burden of proof wasn't necessarily on Drew Lock in this case. It was on Teddy Bridgewater to prove that he was better than Drew Lock, and for Drew Lock to also show them that he wasn't as good as Teddy Bridgewater. And I think a little bit of both happened. We heard reports that Drew Lock was kind of struggling in training camp. We heard rumors that Teddy Bridgewater was fine. And it was but neither quarterback was really outshining the other. And if you're the young guy and you've been there for 2 years, you've been in this offense, you've been on this team for 2 years, and you can't win the starting job, and you're a second round pick, there's a little bit of clout for you. There's a little bit of, hey, you're our guy, and they still take it away from you. Maybe it's showing that Drew Lock has bigger problems than we realize as far as on the field. So, okay, I think I reconnected. Let me see. Are we reconnected over here? Okay, we are reconnected. But yeah, Drew Lock, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Drew Lock. I wish him the best. I like Drew Lock. I thought he showed a lot of poise. I thought he showed a lot of athleticism. I thought his arm strength is great. He might actually have just as strong an arm as Mahomes, and that's no cap. We just haven't seen it really, and then that's unfortunate. But he's in a tough spot, and it might just be over. It might be over for Drew Lock, and it's sad because, again, good guy, showed poise. I think it just wasn't his time. I genuinely believe it just was not Drew Lock's time in Denver. And sometimes it is about timing. Timing plays a huge hand in these decisions. It plays a huge hand in the overall outlook for a team. And unfortunately, just was not Lock's time. But them's the breaks, kid. Hopefully, he'll land on his feet. Who knows? He could end up being a starter. Could end up being a Hall of Famer. We don't know. He's young. That's the other thing people need to remember. He's a young kid. Let him learn. Let him grow. Let him do his thing. Another quarterback who's very young and who is very underlooked and who I have questioned greatly over the past few years is Daniel Jones. And let's talk about him, because I do not hate Daniel Jones. Let me make this abundantly clear. Before we get to this segment, I want to make this so clear to every Giants fan out there. I don't hate Daniel Jones. I don't despise Daniel Jones. I don't want him to fail. I am just giving you the truth. And the truth is, Daniel Jones was not ready to be a franchise guy. Daniel Jones was never going to be a franchise-changing quarterback, and he likely never will be. But that's okay. And let me start my argument by looking at the stats. Let's do that. Daniel Jones, 35 touchdowns, 22 interceptions in his first 2 years. Not bad, but also not great. Almost 6,000 yards passing, completing 62% of his passes, 8-18. Again, the numbers, they're not bad, but they're also not like, oh my God, this is the guy. And when you watch him play, it's inconsistent. It's actually like they drafted Eli Manning light. And that's no disrespect to Eli Manning. Daniel Jones, probably not as a level of Eli Manning, probably never will be as successful, if we're being honest. But Daniel Jones, to me, he's entering his third year as the Giants quarterback. It's only his second official year as the starter, although he was drafted in the first round and he was going to start. He was just going to start his rookie year. You never draft a guy in the first round and expect him not to start like that. And the team this offseason declined his fifth-year option, which to a lot of people means that he's likely not going to be in the plans unless he has a breakout season this year. And that's what he needs to have. If Daniel Jones doesn't have a breakout season this year, he's history in New York. That's it. And them's the breaks. That's how it be. The NFL is a monster, a cutthroat business that will move on from you. That's something that I think Daniel Jones definitely has in mind. That's something the Giants definitely know and have in mind. And it is sad because when Daniel Jones was coming out of college, one thing I thought about him was Daniel Jones can be a good quarterback. And that is his ceiling. And when he's playing in the NFL, I think it's undeniable that when you see him play, that is true. Daniel Jones' ceiling is a solid quarterback. It's not an elite quarterback. It's not a great quarterback. It's not a Hall of Fame level quarterback. It is good quarterback. And the question is, should the Giants have spent a first-round pick on a guy who was just going to be good? Probably not. And look, they passed on a guy this year in Justin Fields who had the potential to be great and who were watching this preseason be great. But Daniel Jones was never going to be that guy. Daniel Jones I don't understand, honestly, what the obsession was with Daniel Jones in the draft. He had a good arm. He looked good, but he struggled with footwork. He struggled with being consistent in the pocket. And look, he's shown he has athleticism. He's shown that, he has spurts of being good, but he's a very streaky player. And so there are times where he lacks poise. There's times where you can see he gets rattled. And that's not something you want to see out of your guy. That's not something you want to see, especially out of a young quarterback. And over time, you don't want him to stick with that stuff. You don't want that stuff to become a consistent trait of his. And I don't care what all these Giants fans want to say. Oh, well, he was one game out of the playoffs. 6-10, fuck off. I don't care. That doesn't count. In the NFC East, it doesn't count if he was one game out of the playoffs. But I think Daniel Jones this year, it is a make or break year from him. He has to be not only just good and the Giants went whatever, like what can they go this year, 8-9 and snuck into the playoffs. It can't be that. He has to be good, great for them to stick with him past this year. And that's just the truth. And I know Giants fans don't want to hear it. I know Johnny probably doesn't want to hear it. But that is the truth. Because a few years ago, they bet on a guy whose ceiling was solid instead of building around and waiting for the guy whose ceiling was great, which is probably the way they should have done it. They should not have drafted Daniel Jones, at least as high as they did. I think Daniel Jones was a second to third round talent, honestly, because he's a prospect. He was always a prospect. And what I will say about him that he has shown is he has shown that he can play. This is not about, Daniel Jones can't play the game of football. Of course he can. Of course he can. He's thrown 35 touchdowns, 22 picks, and over almost 6,000 yards in 2 years. He can play football. It was never about that. It's about whether or not he can be great, whether or not he can be the franchise guy and carry the Giants, and you just don't see it. It's not happening. And unless it happens this year, guys, I'm sorry, Daniel Jones is not going to be a New York Giant. And they're going to move on. They're going to hopefully, if they're smart, move on and get Rattler. Get one of these other quarterbacks that are coming out next year. Trade for somebody else who can make that team better. I hope for the sake of Daniel Jones, he has a breakout year. He has to have a Pro Bowl year. He has to prove that he is a franchise guy. And if he doesn't, it's over. And the Giants and Dave Gettleman and everyone who picked Daniel Jones in the first round and was like, oh my God, we found the guy and let's rally around the guy, they're going to be proven wrong. And it's sad because the saddest part is Daniel Jones never should have been in this position to begin with. He never should have been a first-round pick. Because it's not an indictment on Jones. It's an indictment on some of these people who evaluate talent. They put people in positions they're not ready for, or they put people in positions thinking they know everything. Thinking that these GMs, they think they know everything about how to observe talent. Yet half the people in every draft end up being busts. It's a crapshoot. Be honest with yourselves. It's a crapshoot sometimes. And sometimes you like a player. If they liked Daniel Jones and that was it, I'm fine with that. And if they want to stick with Daniel Jones because they like him, cool. That's fine. It's not a smart football move if you can get someone who's better and who has the ability over time to be better. It's not smart, but it's fine. And if it gets you in the position and it gets you in a position where you can win a Super Bowl, sure. I just don't see it happening. Sorry. I like Daniel Jones. And he's not a bust. Let me make that abundantly clear. I don't think he's a bust because and it's easy to say it because he can play football. If the term busts mean he can't play football and he never should have been in the league, then he's definitely not a bust. If the term bust means he should have been a franchise quarterback by now, then he probably is. But I don't know. It depends on your definition of what a bust is, right? That's what it depends on. I'm not gonna speak on that right now. Anyway, what I will speak on is this channel and how great it is and how much I love giving you guys content. Therefore, you should show me some love, just a little bit of love. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Let's move on. Actually, let's stick with the NFL and stick with quarterbacks. Oh, big surprise there. And talk about, excuse me. Ooh, had two there. Excuse me. And talk about the Saints quarterback competition that is heating up between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. So let's talk about it now as I pull up my cheat sheet here. So Jameis Winston could not have made a stronger case to become the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints after his performance on Monday Night Football this past week. Winston completed 9 of 10 passes for 123 yards, 2 deep touchdown throws that ended up in the spectacular hands of Marquez Callaway against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that he showed a lot of poise here. Saints head coach Sean Payton, though, did decline to comment on whether he had made an official announcement on the starting quarterback, on who that's going to be. He did say that he would probably make a decision by the next preseason game, so we have this week to kind of see where that's going to go. For what it's worth, Taysom Hill, he finished the game 11 of 20 passing for 138 yards, no turnovers, no rushing attempts, though. And it's also worth to know for Taysom Hill, he's kind of got a little bit of credibility as far as being a starter in this offense, specifically because in relief of Drew Brees last year, he went 3-1 as a starting quarterback, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 72% of his passes were completed. He completed 72% of his passes, threw for 928 yards, 450 yards rushing on the ground, and 8 rushing touchdowns. So very dynamic player in Taysom Hill. And I know a lot of people immediately want to go and say, Jameis Winston, he won the starting quarterback job in that one quarter, and he should be the starting quarterback. And what I will say to that is, Jameis Winston had one good quarter of preseason football against the Jacksonville Jaguars with his wide receiver making great catches. Yes, that's true. And this is not, I'm not trying to say Jameis Winston it couldn't become the starting quarterback or couldn't win the job. I just think that with Taysom Hill, I still think that he provides a better option for this team to run a more dynamic offense and probably the offense that Sean Payton wants to run, which is one that gets Hill outside of the pocket, gets Hill, moving around, gets Hill maybe running for a bunch of yards in a game and becoming a little bit of a dynamic player, kind of like Lamar Jackson, although he's not Lamar Jackson. I want to make that clear. But Taysom Hill is still one hell of an athlete. I think he is what Tim Tebow, or what people thought Tim Tebow was. And I am a huge Tim Tebow fan. I want to make that clear too. But let's be honest here. A lot of people hype Tim Tebow up to be, oh my God, this super athlete who can throw. He is Tim Tebow, but he can throw the fuck out of a football, can Taysom Hill. And that is truth. Taysom Hill proved last year he can be a starter in this league. And I think the Saints have been coveting him for a reason. They gave him a pretty good contract for a reason, although a lot of that is voidable. It's because I think they believe in him, and I think Sean Payton does. And I think what really Sean Payton is looking for is Taysom Hill to prove that he can't be the starter, or for Jameis Winston to take it away. And I don't think, if we're being honest, Jameis Winston in one good quarter of preseason football, throwing for 2 touchdowns on spectacular catches by his wide receiver, really took it away. I think Taysom Hill didn't really do anything in the preseason that we've seen to really give it away either. So I think if Sean Payton, if I know Sean Payton like I think I do, I think he's going to stick with Taysom Hill. I think that if Taysom Hill struggles, he won't be quick about switching over to Jameis Winston. I think he'll be quick. Yeah. I think if Sean Payton sees after a few weeks that Taysom Hill just is not working, He'll make that switch very quick because Jameis Winston, I think, can also run the Saints offense pretty efficiently. I just think the ceiling is higher, significantly higher with Taysom Hill. And when you get him those reps week to week, when you get him that in-game that in-game experience, it will prove very, very handy for this year to come. And I think Taysom Hill will get better. And I truly believe that. The dude completed 72% of his passes last year. Went 3-1 as a starter, threw 450 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns. This guy is a baller, an athlete. He needs to be on the field. And look, even if Jameis Winston's a starting quarterback, Hale is going to be used. You can expect him to be used. He's going to be used in that same, in a very similar way I think he was used under Drew Brees. But I think there are a lot of people out there who are looking at one quarter of preseason football and amplifying it and making it, oh my God, this is the only thing that's ever happened in this entire quarterback competition. Like acting like there hasn't been, an entire training camp that has gone by, and acting like there isn't, any backstory at all or any body of work for Taysom Hill at all, except he's had a body of work. He's been in this offense for the past 4 years. He knows this offense better than anyone in that quarterback room. He knows how to run it to the best of its ability. And Sean Payton is comfortable with him, and he trusts him, and he has great reason to, because Taysom Hill in the running game has an advantage. Taysom Hill in the passing game, because of his ability to run, I think has an advantage over Jameis Winston. And Jameis Winston can still throw. Jameis Winston can still be a good quarterback, but I got to give the slight edge to Taysom Hill, and I'm going to, because, like I said, Taysom Hill has not done anything to give this job away. And that's what has to happen in order for Jameis Winston to do it. And honestly, I don't see it. That one preseason game I did not see him take it away. Maybe Sean Payton agrees. Maybe he disagrees. We'll see about that. I just think if you want to optimize your ability, optimize your offensive firepower, you put Taysom Hill in as your starting quarterback, and you see if defenses can figure him out. Because unlike Lamar Jackson, he doesn't run through people. He runs around people. Taysom Hill runs through people. He is a hard-hitting, H-back, old-style quarterback. He will run right up the middle and get you that first down, baby. And he'll run, and he's one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL today. He can throw the ball, and it might not look great every time, but it's efficient. It's very efficient. Look at what he did last year. That's all I will say about that. Look at what he did last year on this team. So we'll see about that. We'll see how well Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston do in practice this week, because this is going to be a very important week, I think, in practice to prove who is going to end up being that starting quarterback going into next week. In case you guys haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. I want to kind of switch gears. This is the last official topic that we have for today, and then we're probably going to I'll take some questions in the chat if you guys have any. Otherwise, we'll probably end it. But let me do one more thing. Sorry about that. I'm my own producer and hosting this alone. I should be paid way more than I am. I'm not paid for this at all. But I could be if you go to patreon.com/Real Take Sports to support this wonderful show and all the wonderful work that we do and all the wonderful content we put out every single day, every single week. I'm adding another show starting in September on the first Sunday of the NFL. We're doing Real Take Football Talk live Sunday morning, September, I think it's the 12th or the 11th, either one. Gonna be live there and talking to you guys about the NFL, about the games, and going over every single game and the matchups and some of the keys behind those matchups. So if you want to help out and help me feel better about doing that, hit up patreon.com/Real Take Sports. And you can also get some exclusive content in the future and access to our exclusive post show for Real Take Wrestle Talk on Tuesdays by hitting up patreon.com/Real Take Sports and joining the $5 a month or above tier. So check that out. be sure to do that. And worst case, if you can't do that, understood. Hit that like button. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts would also be much, much, much appreciated. I am just chilling out everything today. Another set of people who are shilling out, it would seem, are Bleacher Report. So this was interesting. Bleacher Report released their quarterback rankings. They ranked all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL 1 to 32, and some of the results were very, very peculiar, and some of them were spot on. I'll give them that, but mostly peculiar here. So let's just go from 1 to 32. Number 1, they have Patrick Mahomes. Following that, at 2, they have Tom Brady, 3, Aaron Rodgers, 4, Russell Wilson, 5, Josh Allen, 6, Lamar Jackson, 7, Matt Ryan. So let's just take a look at that right here. That top 10 from Patrick Mahomes to Kyler Murray. One thing that stands out to me immediately, Aaron Rodgers not being number 2. That immediately stands out to me. I understand Patrick Mahomes being number 1. I would probably agree with that. And I love the stuff that Aaron Rodgers does. This is why I'm about to make the case that he should be above Tom Brady, because Aaron Rodgers proved last year. He won the MVP last year. He went out there with all the scrutiny around him and won the MVP. Brady, yeah, he won a Super Bowl. But you can't tell me that Tom Brady is a better player than Aaron Rodgers is right now. That's untrue. Tom Brady was in a very unique situation where he had great pieces around him, a great defense around him that made him successful. That is truth too. And that's not me saying, oh, Tom Brady can't play football. He's falling off a cliff and he needs help. No, Tom Brady still, I would still put him in the top 10, top 6 even. He can be a top 6 quarterback in my opinion. I just don't see him being the second best quarterback in the NFL right now. I think Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback is better. Let's move on now. So that's number 1. I think Aaron Rodgers. So this is just underselling Aaron Rodgers, and who knows? It'll probably be a chip on his shoulder as well. No, let's move on here, and then we move on to number 4 through. Look at 4 through 8 because that's very interesting to me in the order they have these people at. So they have Russell Wilson, then Josh Allen, then Lamar Jackson, Matt Ryan, and Dak Prescott. So that again, I don't know if I agree with. I agree with Russell Wilson being ahead of all those other guys. I would also put Russell Wilson above Tom Brady right now. I would also put probably Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson above Tom Brady right now. It's, again, not all time. Not saying Tom Brady's a bad quarterback, but right now, I think those players are better than Tom Brady. Fight me. So that's where I would probably put Tom Brady around 6 and move everyone up. Basically, that would be me. And then you get to Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, and Ryan Tannehill. So those are just about where I thought they would be. Ryan Tannehill had a great season last year. He probably deserves to be moved up some charts. Do I think he's the 10th best quarterback in the league? By the way, I want to make it clear. The NFL is loaded with quarterback talent. Almost all of these quarterbacks on this list are extremely talented. So just make that clear. That's not an indictment on anyone. And then you move on, and you got some of the young guys. Kyler Murray at 10. Justin Herbert, after one great year, by the way, 31 touchdowns, going up to number 11 on this list. Probably deserves that, I would say. I'll put him up there. But you know, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just me reacting to this. I don't know. I wouldn't have. If you're going to put Ryan Tannehill up there, you probably should put Herbert up there. But the biggest one here, as you look at number 12 through 15, look at this. This is where I have a huge problem, by the way. Number 12, Matthew Stafford. Okay, fair enough. Number 13, Derek Carr. Fair enough. Sure, maybe a little lower. Number 14, Kirk fucking Cousins. You're telling me Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield? Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than I know Ben Roethlisberger ain't what he used to be. Trust me, I watched the AFC North game. I watched those Steelers games. He was not great at the latter part of the season, but he's better than Kirk Cousins. Jared Goff is better than Kirk Cousins. I mean, then that's no cap. Jared Goff is better than Kirk Cousins. How do you have Kirk Cousins above Baker Mayfield, though? That is blasphemous. That truly blasphemous. Baker Mayfield broke the NFL rookie record before Justin Herbert did after him. But he broke the NFL rookie record for touchdown passes in the season. He balled out on a terrible Cleveland Browns team. Got them to a winning record a year after going 0-16. And you're telling me that Baker Mayfield is a worse quarterback or not as good as Kirk fucking Cousins? This guy literally had his teammate Everson Griffin call him trash the second he left the Vikings. He was like, Kirk Cousins is garbage. And because he is, it makes no sense to me that Kirk Cousins has had the first two fully guaranteed contracts in NFL history. Both went to Kirk Cousins. Both of them. And they've got them rated. They've got him rated higher than Baker Mayfield. Ludicrous Bleacher Report. Absolutely ludicrous. Luda. Oh my God, it's bad. Let's keep going down this list because what a list this turns out to be. So you got Jared Goff here below Carson Wentz. Sure, they're probably at the same level. But below Ben Roethlisberger, but below Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff is definitely a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. I'll take that to the bank. I'll take that to the bank. I think the Lions are actually going to do fairly well. They got protection behind him. I think Jared Goff isn't as bad as people say. He wasn't as good as being a first overall pick, but he's not as bad as people say. He still got his team to a Super Bowl. He was still successful in that offense, regardless of what people want to say about him. Then you look at the rest of the list here. You got Danny Dimes here at 20. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones above all of some of these people. Some of the people they have Daniel Jones rated above are Jameis Winston, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jimmy Garoppolo. You're telling me Jimmy Garoppolo is a much better quarterback. I would rather have Jimmy Garoppolo than Daniel Jones. Jimmy Garoppolo at least has some intangible qualities that show he can be, a great quarterback sometimes. Similar thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's definitely better than Daniel Jones. I'd rather have Ryan Fitzpatrick. If I'm trying to win a Super Bowl one year, I'm taking Ryan Fitzpatrick now over Daniel Jones right now. That's truth. And then you round out someone who fell really low in this is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold fell all the way down to 27th. They have him below Andy Dalton, Cam Newton, Jimmy G. And you know what? He didn't really do much on the Jets to prove it, but I think Sam Darnold is going to prove a lot of people wrong as a member of the Carolina Panthers this year. This is real funny, too. We talked about the quarterback situation between the Denver Broncos and how it was very even, and neither quarterback really took it, so that was peculiar. Bleacher Report has both Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater rated 29. That's why I have two 29s up there, because they did. They have Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater both rated at 29. They couldn't even pick them. But, yeah, probably about right. Zach Wilson is not as good as Jalen Hurts. I'm sorry. I know that kid's got a cannon, but he's not as good, and he's on a terrible team. Sorry, not as good. That's cap. Also, lost in all of this, at number 28, Tua Tagovailoa. I love Tua. Last year, though, there were some things that were apparent about his I don't know whether it was lack of desire to throw the ball downfield, and maybe he. I know he doesn't have the strongest arm, but there were some times where he would just throw it and it would look off, and he would just go into the dirt, and it would be short passes, and you were concerned about it. So that's something that Tua needs to really remedy this year in order to move up. I think 28. Again, young quarterback. We'll see what he does this year. But the biggest things that stood out to me, the two biggest things that stood out to me that I'm mad about, Kirk Cousins being the 14th best quarterback in the NFL. Kirk Cousins, at best, should be like 20. Put him in between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Cam Newton. That's where Kirk Cousins is. Kirk Cousins is probably the 23rd, 24th best quarterback in the league. In a very talented NFL. That's just truth. He fucking garbage. His own teammates started calling him garbage. Come on, man. Stephon Diggs. He ran Stephon Diggs out of town because Stephon Diggs didn't want to play with him. He wanted to go play with a real quarterback. You're telling me he's better than Baker fucking Mayfield? Fuck out of here, Bleacher Report. All cap. No ball. All cap. Anyway, unless you guys have any questions, that's all I have to say about this list. So if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat right now. In case you missed it, we talked about everything from Rachel Nichols being fired to LeBron's agent being sued to everything else in the wonderful world of quarterbacks in the NFL. So please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever new videos are released. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow us. And be sure to hit up patreon.com/RealTakeSports to support us, support the content we put out, support our new show that's coming out, support our exclusive content that you will get access to at the $5 a month or above club. You get exclusive first access to special documentary videos we have coming out. You also get access to our weekly live show after Real Take Wrestle Talk on Tuesday nights around 10 p.m. We talk about wrestling for about half an hour to an hour after the show. So you get access to that show. You'll get access to whatever shows are incoming at the $5 a month or above club on patreon.com/Real Take Sports. You can also just, if you want to just pitch in, become a sixth man, and just show your gratitude. You can also donate at $2 a month. The $2 a month club is fine. We'll also work with you, on that as well. Just reach out to us at Real Take Sports on Twitter, realtakesportstalk@gmail.com. Again, realtakesportstalk@gmail.com. Reach out to us however you want, and we'll make something work. So, yeah, what else is going on in the wonderfully wacky world of sports? I don't know. We didn't talk about the baseball. Well, we'll talk about the baseball playoffs on a separate thing. I have a whole special thing planned for that because, by the way, the baseball playoffs are going to probably go really late this year. Really late. Like, they have the final, I think if we have a Game 7 for the World Series, it's going to go into, like, November 3rd or November 4th, which would be, like, the latest since 2009. So that's that's a huge thing that's people are talking about right now. Like wow, like baseball is going to go pretty freaking late this year. But that's it. That's sometimes, that's, I guess, how the scheduling worked out because, the year was kind of thrown off by previous year and the COVID year, maybe. So that's how it is. What else is going on here? What else is going on in the wonderful world of the NFL? Breaking news. Okay. So, here we go. High school recruit Imani Bates announced that he has committed to the University of Memphis. That's interesting. That's an interesting thing. Like I said, Rachel Nichols also booted off of ESPN. I'm just looking through Twitter. You guys can also put stuff in the chat. Put some questions in the chat. I'll answer them. I'm just looking at stuff on Twitter right now. What else is happening? LeBron James was apparently on Hard Knocks. Don't really care about that. Oh, here we go. So, breaking news, the NFL announces it will begin requiring all coaches and staff to be fully vaccinated in order to enter locker rooms on game days. Yeah. Take the fucking shot. That's all I got to say. Take the fucking shot. Unless you have a condition where you literally cannot take the shot, just take the fucking shot. Get immunity. Get a better immune system. It's like not wearing your fucking seatbelt when you're driving. Or yeah. Like, why wouldn't... whatever. Whatever. Look, hey, them's the breaks. You got to deal with the consequences. If you don't, that's fine. If you don't want to, like, I'm not going to force you to, but probably should. What else is going on? What else? I'm, again, just looking through Twitter here. CM Punk returned. I know that has nothing to do with regular sports. That's a wrestling thing, and we have a separate show for that. But CM Punk returned, and I'm still not over it. Actually, I'm missing, as of this recording, I am missing part of Dynamite, and I cannot wait to watch that. But yeah. Yeah, looks like that's all the big news. I think I covered everything that's been breaking today. So, guys, thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for sticking with us. This has been a Real Take Sports Talk number 52. 1 whole year's worth of Real Take Sports Talk. As far as weekly shows, finally we got to it. So, looking forward to bringing you guys more. Again, So in starting September, it's going to become really busy. There's going to be Real Take Wrestle Talk on Tuesdays, Real Take Sports Talk. I think Wednesday might become the day, and because there's no other day it can realistically happen. So that's probably what it's going to be. Real Take Wrestle Talk on Tuesday nights, Real Take Sports Talk on Wednesday, Real Take Football Talk coming to you every single NFL week, all 18 of them now. Sunday mornings throughout the NFL, we'll break down all of the big games, all of the big storylines going into that week. And actually, not all the big games. We'll be talking about every single game. So Real Take Football Talk going to be coming to you as well. Also looking to expand a little bit. Chicago fans, stay tuned. But I'll talk about that on another day. We will see you guys, same time, same place, next week. Apparently Wednesday night. We'll see you.